past a certain point, and I think we are far past that certain point, you have to acknowledge that the system is being abused. And where that's the case, you have to fix it.
Hello and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm Tim Shipman, the political editor of The Spectator, and today I'm joined by Katie Lamb, MP for the Weald in Kent, shadow spokesman on Home Affairs, and generally regarded as one of the rising stars of the Tory new intake. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Look, big issue at the moment is immigration, welfare. You've been doing some digging around and making some waves. What have you found out?
So on Tuesday last week, for the first time, the government have published the figures on who's getting welfare, so who's getting universal credit. And we know that there are 1.3 million people who aren't Brits who are on universal credit. They didn't publish how much they're receiving in pounds and pence. They did it just on the number of people. But if they are on the basic rate for somebody over 25, that's £6 billion a year. And it's about 1 in 6 of all of the people who are on universal credit aren't Brits. And given all of the conversations that we're having at the moment about the welfare bill, we've seen how impossible this government has found it to cut anything off the welfare bill at all, which is rapidly ballooning. I think most people would think it's crazy that 1 in 6 people that is getting universal credit isn't even British. And
presumably that was a situation that's pertained under previous governments as well, but we've never known the numbers before, is that right? Yeah. And the amount that Labour were trying to cut, if I remember rightly, was around about 5 billion, which wasn't even reducing the bill by 5 billion. It was reducing how much it's going to go up by 5 billion, and they've failed in that. So, I mean, where are you in making this sort of Conservative policy that you would take this away?
Well, it's already Conservative policy. So we laid some amendments to the Borders Bill. I and my shadow Home Office colleagues laid some amendments to the Borders Bill that said if you have ILR, indefinite leave to remain. So the way it works at the moment is you get a visa to come to the country, and most visas don't entitle you to state support. Some of the humanitarian routes do, but the vast majority of visas don't. But after you've been here for 5 years, or on some visas 10 years, you can get something called indefinite leave to remain. And as the name implies, that means that you can stay as long as you like. But it also means that you can apply for welfare, for social housing, your healthcare and dental and social care at that point is then free. There's no NHS surcharge anymore. And so we laid some amendments to the Borders Bill that said you can still have ILR. It makes sense within the context of an immigration system to have a status that means that, you know, people can put down roots. But benefits shouldn't be for people on ILR. If you come to this country and you fall on hard times, you can feel immense personal sympathy for people in those contexts. But we can't, the British taxpayer can't afford then to support those people for the rest of their lives.
And you presumably think that would act as some kind of deterrent to some people who want to come here?
I think it would certainly change the economic question for lots of people who come here. If you take something like the health and social care visa, where I think the Department for Health forecast on the health and social care visa was 6,000 visas a year. And over 3 years, 600,000 people and their dependents came over on the health and social care visa.
Just a factor of 100 out.
Yes, it's just and of course, nobody was disciplined for that and nobody lost their job within the health and social care department. But those people, we are effectively underpaying to do their day job, because over the course of their lifetimes, we will pay much, much, much more in benefits than we would just to pay market rates for those salaries in the first place. So the state is making a load of economically self-defeating decisions that allow it to put off difficult decisions today that will cost us a huge amount in the medium term.
And this seems to be one of the issues with migration. That it's not just about migration, and it's not just about numbers, and it's not just about resources. It's having an impact on the wider economic picture and a lot of sort of social policy as well. I mean, do we need to be looking at migration more in the round as governments trying to tackle this?
Yes, I think that's actually the only way to do it. I mean, because I do the Shadow Home Office brief, sometimes it can feel like all roads lead to immigration, and that might not quite be true, but it's not a million miles off being true. I mean, if you think about the planning framework, we are never, it doesn't matter what the planning framework says, we are never going to build enough houses if net migration is at whatever it was in 2023, like 900 and odd thousand people. Like, that's never, ever, ever going to happen. So the housing shortage is only going to get worse. So you can't start having a conversation about the housing shortage unless you've already had a conversation about immigration. You can't start having a conversation about the welfare bill unless you're already having a conversation about the immigration and foreign nationals welfare bill. And so it becomes, I think, really impossible to have a democratically legitimate conversation about lots of things in this country until you've tackled the immigration question.
And yet the whole thing has become hugely politicised. I mean, did you get any cross-party support for these amendments, or is this an argument? No.
So we, in the bill committee, it was only me and my two Conservative colleagues who voted for these amendments. And then all of the other parties and the parties that were represented in the room were Labour, the Lib Dems and the SNP, either abstained or voted against.
It feels like what's sort of the norm on conversations about migration has evolved a lot over recent decades. I mean, I guess if a Labour politician was sitting here, they'd say, look, we need to be a place that welcomes people who are genuinely in need. It's a great tradition of Britain to be somewhere that welcomes migrants. This is all a bit sort of unkind. But do you feel we've sort of moved on from that? Migration is now a kind of a situation around the world where so many people are more mobile than they used to be. There's a lot of conflicts in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, which are sending people here. And obviously, you know, having the English language and the ability to travel is making it much easier for people to be mobile and come here. Does that change the context of this, do you think? And do you feel some people haven't caught up with that? Where is this? What does a humane and sensible migration policy look like in this context?
I think there are two big things that have changed the context. So one, you alluded to, is between sort of mass transit and mass communication. It's just very, very easy for people to come here. And so it's true that Britain has been for a long time a sort of generous nation when it comes to letting people come here who are suffering from persecution. But that was always pragmatically limited by how far away they lived. You know, once you're talking about the whole world, that becomes something completely untenable. You know, we can see and know and feel the fact that lots of people around the world live incredibly difficult lives, and also know that there's no way that the solution to that is that lots and lots and lots and lots of them come and live here. And the second thing that I think has changed the context is it has become clearer and clearer and clearer as time has gone on that lots of people around the world don't play by the same rules that we do. You know, the British are generally respectful of rules. You know, they want things to be fair, open and tolerant and kind and generous. And the reality is, lots of people have come here and gamed our system. And there's a point at which generosity becomes naivety. And if we refuse to accept that that's true, then we're going to end up in a situation where, for now, 1 in 6, but, you know, may well soon be 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people who are on benefits, which is a system that was set up to support, you know, other Brits when they've fallen on hard times. There is no way that we can afford that. It's just not possible. When
you talk about sort of gaming the system, is this where, you know, you've got previous experience as an advisor in the Home Office? What's your view on the approach that we should take on the European Convention on Human Rights now and compliance with the court? Is it the case that you think the judges are sort of interpreting things in a way that they weren't originally intended, or is there something else we can do beyond leaving? I think your position is that it looks more likely that we need to leave the convention.
My view, which I've spoken about before, is I think the way that the convention is now being interpreted, and it has changed over time, and you can see that just based on cases that went to the court and how they were decided in, say, the 70s and 80s, and then changes over the 90s, and then even more so over the 2000s. So it's not necessarily inherent in the convention, but as the court operates today, we cannot control the border within the confines of the European Court of Human Rights, in my opinion. I just don't see that that can be done. And that is partly because, as you were alluding to, because people game the system. And we know that to be true. We know from things like stings on dodgy lawyers that people lie about the circumstances that they've come from, that people will deliberately claim things about themselves that aren't true, or they will kind of make them true. So they'll say, I was suffering political persecution, and to evidence that, they will, post on their social media accounts things criticising the government in the country that they've come from. Not because that's an actual political protest that they want to make, but because they want to stay here. And so past a certain point, and I think we are far past that certain point, you have to acknowledge that the system is being abused. And where that's the case, you have to fix it.
And your leader, Kemi Badenoch, has announced a sort of policy review on this. We're all expecting to hear something concrete on that at the time of the party conference. Are you confident you're winning the argument on that, and that it's going to end up saying that we ought to withdraw?
I don't know what the review will say. I would be surprised if it says that we should stay, because, as I say, I think it is really, really, really difficult to do what has to be done on the border within the confines of the ECHR. I think, if I understand it correctly, the review is also about working out exactly how you would do it, because there are knock-on questions, things like, I'm not a lawyer, but would every case that's been arbitrated, that's been decided by the court, does that stand? If so, is that precedent in English law? Or do you say, well, all of those verdicts stand because that was the law at the time, but we're drawing a line underneath them and all of those precedents have been removed? Are there some of those cases that actually you would want the precedent to stay? It's not a kind of... I don't think we should be simplistic about how easy it will be, but it's no less necessary just because it will involve various sort of subsequent changes and plans.
I mean, that's the sort of the argument about the detail. But talk to me a bit about the vibe. I mean, what's the tone we need to strike on this? Because if you look at the grooming gangs issue, on which you've been pretty outspoken, I think a lot of people, again, were worried about offending people and didn't then get to grips with it. Do we need to talk tougher on this? Do we need to be blunter about it? Or is there a way of kind of squaring the circle that can bring other parties on board with what, a lot of supporters of your party would think was becoming a sort of common sense position?
I personally don't feel the need to, actively talk tougher or less tough on anything in particular. I think you mentioned the grooming gangs, almost naively so. I just think in public life, you just have to tell the truth. And the more that you try and stifle the truth or dress it up in one way or another, or give it a particular spin or a rhetoric, or the truth will out in the end. And if you take something like migrants and benefits, the original thing we were talking about, if the truth is we just can't afford to do this, then that's the truth. And if on the ECHR, the truth is a country without a border isn't a country, we cannot maintain our border in the way that the public demand and deserve within the confines of the ECHR, so we're not going to do this anymore. If that's the truth, then you just have to tell the truth.
I mean, I think people would conventionally see you as fairly tough on this, but your own background is sort of interesting. You've come from a family of immigrants. Tell us about that, because explain how it's different now.
Well, my grandmother was a refugee, so she came to the UK when she was 13 years old in 1937. She didn't speak a word of English. And her family had been, her grandfather was a senator in Germany, a left-wing senator, fiercely critical of the Nazis. And so when Hitler came to power, the whole family was persecuted. And they went first to Czechoslovakia, and then it wasn't safe there either. And then they came here. And absolutely, there is a place, a proud place for Britain to extend a welcome and support to people in need around the world. But it has to be in proportion with the size of our country. And it also has to be for people who want to become British if they're going to be here permanently. So my grandmother, as I say, she came here as a teenager. She learned English. She didn't speak German at home. She didn't teach my father, her son, German. There was not a sense that she was, a member of the German diaspora. She was a Brit. She totally assimilated into British life. And if people want to come here and not be part of British culture, then, well, we've seen and we will continue to see that is a massive problem for the rest of us.
I mean, you beat Labour at the general election, but Reform were only just behind them. Yeah. I mean, it feels like probably next time around they might be. Or do you feel like they're your main rivals? We've seen some of these super polls which suggest that even your seat, which I think is about the 8th safest Tory seat in the country, is potentially at risk. I mean, how does all this play with your constituents, and where does the Conservative Party put itself relative to Reform in order to kind of preserve a Tory party going forward?
Well, again, I think positioning yourself in a way in relation to anybody else is a bit of a mistake, and I think a bit of a fool's errand. I just think what the Conservative Party needs to be and do, this is also what I think all politicians should be and do, but specifically the Conservative Party, because of the context and the backdrop that we have, and of course the massive credibility issue that we have with the public, because we broke their trust. I'm a new MP, but the party did, is to, I think, be very specific and very consistent and really honest. And I think if you can do those three things, that really is all that you can do. And it's what, a year and a couple of weeks since the Conservatives suffered, I think, the biggest electoral defeat in modern history. I think the government, as was, lost more seats than any government ever. And so it's going to take time to rebuild that trust and rebuild that relationship. But you ask about my constituents, I mean, I think what they tell me is that they really appreciate me, just being straight with them. And I always will tell them what I think about something. And sometimes my constituents write to me often. Sometimes I agree with them and I'll say that. And sometimes I don't, and I'll say that as well. But they can always find out where I stand on any particular issue. And I think that's not enough, but that's the foundation of building back that kind of credibility.
How long do you think it will take, though? I mean, there's one Tory strategist says it takes 2 years before people are prepared to forgive and forget. Do you feel like you're still in that period where it's difficult to get a hearing? I
think probably still now, but it's basically impossible to say because the cycle has shortened so much and things are so much more volatile now. So the honest answer is I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows. But it still feels pretty raw at the moment.
The youngsters in the party are often seen as the sort of radical crusaders who are perhaps a little bit more impatient than some of the old guard. You want a career going forward. You want a party that's still intact. There's a lot of suspicion that next May could be pretty disastrous again for the party. How long should the leader have to turn this around, do you think?
I think it's a long-term project, and I think I think that there are a lot of people in the 2024 intake who are very keen to contribute and work very, very hard. And also everybody who came in 2024 fought a massive battle. Nobody had an easy general election. Nobody had an easy run up to the general election. Everybody arrived. In almost all cases, there are, I think, less than a handful of people were selected in the short campaign. Almost everybody, I was selected about a year ahead of the election. And so most people arrived from 6, 9, 12 months of really tough campaigning in a very difficult context.
A bit more blooded than new MPs often are.
Yes. Yeah. Much, much more. And so I think that mindset conditions the way that the intake feel about the fact that we should be working really hard. And that's true.
And we've just had a reshuffle and none of the 24 intake made a shadow cabinet. I mean, is that a pity? Some people think it is.
Well, I mean, we are already a year from the election and the parliamentary party is really small. So certainly I don't feel like there's anything that I can't do at the moment if I want to do it. You mentioned I'm a Shadow Home Office Minister. I'm an assistant whip. I have lots of issues that I campaign on. I work very closely with Chris Philp, who is very good about, I answer statements from the dispatch box and things like that. So it's not, I think when the parliamentary party is so small, there is a lot of opportunity to go.
You've all got
round.
3 jobs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Halfway to a George Osborne. What's the most unlikely thing that Spectator readers may not know about you? You have a bit of a theatrical background.
Yes, I do. So that's what I was going to say. I think it's probably that.
Tell us about that.
Well, my main career before I went into politics is I worked in finance. I worked for a bank, but I have my whole adult life alongside whatever I've been doing, maybe most of the time professionally. I write musicals, which I really, really enjoy. It's a sort of different part
You write
of
the
me,
book or the music as well? Or?
I write the book. So I write the script and the lyrics. With my best friend from school. So we've been writing songs since we were maybe 11 or 12. We wrote our first musical when we were 15, and we've been doing it professionally since our early 20s.
So how many have you done?
5, work in progress on the 6th.
What's the 6th one then?
Oh no, I couldn't.
Top secret.
Reveal. Yeah.
It's not Brexit the musical or something like that.
No, they are. None of them are political. No.
You must be tempted sitting in the House of Commons sometimes watching some people go about their business.
I would say the drama is of a different kind. It's it doesn't. I don't know that it would translate to the stage very well.
And has all that prepared you for politics, the sort of performance side of things, do you think?
Well, what's funny is of the 3 industries that I know, politics and government, I suppose, is not an industry, but worlds of work, theatre, politics and finance. Theatre and politics are actually really similar because they're kind of gig-based. There's no big grad scheme. You're only as good as your last hit. There's a reasonable amount of luck involved. Performance is subjective. Trust is a very high, trust has a very high value as a currency rather than maybe necessarily pure results and output. So, yes, in lots of ways.
It's a shame you wasted all that time earning all that money at a bank, really, isn't it? You could have been doing this for much longer.
Well, I also really liked working in finance, but working in... Of everything that I've ever done, being a member of parliament is incomparably fulfilling.
And where do you want to end up? What's the thing you most crave as a politician?
Well, I want to fix the country. It's partly because of how I grew up, and the Second World War loomed very large in my family when I was a child, and the role that Britain played in that, in basically saving the world and saving effectively civilization as was in the 40s, meant that we were really deeply patriotic. And I really believe that this is the greatest country in the world, but that at the moment lots of things have gone badly and have gone wrong. All of those things can be fixed. Not all of the fixes are easy, but I think it can be easy to become a bit pessimistic or sort of doom laden about the future of this country. I really think that Britain's best days are ahead, and making sure that that's true is what drives me in my career.
Katie Lamb, thank you very much.
My pleasure.